We are Bajan strong. Good night, St. Lucie. Good night to the good people here in Crab Hill. Hello. Hello. Good night. All right. Sounds as though you are Bajan strong and ready to fight. It is my pleasure to be here for my friend and comrade, Peter Phillips. Peter is my lunch mate. We sit and have lunch in Parliament every Tuesday. And we have the opportunity to share with each other our thoughts, our views and opinions on what is happening in Barbados, but more importantly, the work that the Barbados Labour Party is doing on behalf of the people of Barbados. Now, one of the things I always note about St. Lucie is that whenever you get to the St. Lucie Parish Church, you now got to drive. And I love the fresh and wonderful air that is out here. But as I was making my way here, I happened to pass your opponent. And I said to myself, as I always think of St. Lucie, the only female part of the country, the only parish with a female name, heading up the nation, and here it is, you have an opponent who is an undertaker. And the irony of it struck me because every time the Dems have come to power, they have put us in a death spiral. And like they are sending their candidate now to finish the job and bury us. So we'll not be having any of that. Barbados is a place with a future. It has a future because it has a strong leader. It has a future because it has a strong team working with a leader, and Peter is a part of that team, and our job is to work to put the plans, the initiatives, the legislation, etc. in place that will allow us to achieve the objectives that will build out a life for every single person in Barbados and for the good people here in St. Lucie. Now, the work of Parliament is important. But Parliament has had to deal with a person who left us, didn't say anything much when he was on our side. No, you can't get him to shut up. Hours and hours of verbiage. Hours and hours of drama. Hours and hours of pretense. Hours and hours of misinformation. And when you sift it all through, he leaves you with very little that is of any truth or of any value. So it is challenging because for us, there's so many of us on our side, we try really hard, not to pile in on him, to let him talk because you don't have other people who are going to talk, so to let him talk and range. But to tell you the honest truth, as I listen, I am more and more convinced that he cannot lead the Democratic Labour Party. I am more and more convinced that he should never be entrusted with the leadership of this country, Barbados. And after watching the performance, I am telling you, the Democratic Labour Party will have to wheel and come again. And here is why. Governance is not a game of politics. Governance is not about making mock sport or treating in an unserious manner the elements of a country that are important to the livelihoods of people. Today, Governance is more and more complicated. It's not as straightforward as it used to be in Grantley Adams' time. It is not as straightforward as it used to be in Errol Barrow's time. It's not as straightforward as it used to be in Tom Adams' time. Each era has seen a higher level of complication and greater impacts of the international world on us. Back in the 1980s, if you were watching television and you saw that there was a volcano somewhere out in Iceland, you wouldn't think one thing about it. You weren't going to worry about it because it's happening out there to them. Ain't got nothing to do with we here, ain't got nothing to do with the cost of living, ain't got nothing to do with my getting a job. But if you think back to a time in Barbados when there was actually a volcano eruption in Iceland, and the dust and the smoke and so on, the ash that spewed into the air, reduced the visibility across Europe, and it stopped European planes from flying. And guess what? Because the planes stopped flying, it meant that visitors to our shores were reduced from Europe because they had to cancel their vacation. And guess what? Because they had to cancel their vacation, it meant that our hotels were not full. And then guess what? It meant that hotels were not going to make the money they were looking forward to. Their rooms were going to be empty. And guess what? They had to lay off waiters, housekeepers, and other personnel because their accommodation was not in use. The occupancy level had dropped. An isolated incident out in Iceland affected housekeepers with children, with families, with rent to pay, utilities to pay, stopped them from being able to do that. I say this because we are living in a more and more complicated environment in which something that happens over here, it will have an impact over there. And what does that mean? It means you need a government that is visionary. You need a government that understands the times and can anticipate the type of impact you would experience and take the necessary steps to block or soften the impact of whatever is happening outside. And we know that since January, the beginning of January last year, there were changes taking place. We know that across the world, just here in December and early January, we received a shock in our region. And that shock had an impact on us. I say this because I'm saying to you that this is no ordinary election. This is not the elections of the past. This election is not about, I like that fella face. I like how he speak. I like how he's talk. It is not about those matters any longer. Your life and your children's lives and the safety of your pension and the ability to get health care and the ability to get roads is going to be conditioned by how you vote on February the 11th. That means you have to carefully scrutinize the team that has put their hand up and said, I want to govern you. Now for me, the only basis on which you could put your hand up and say to me, consider me for your leadership, the only way you could do that is if you have demonstrated to me that you have trained and developed yourself, develop the competence, develop the expertise, have the knowledge, and demonstrate the common sense and creativity that is necessary to give me the governance. That is the only thing I am interested in. I am not here to prop you up because you can't pass your exams. That is what the Democratic Labour Party is seeking to do to this country. They cannot pass the exam of good governance, so they're saying to you, put some of us in because you need an opposition to protect you. That's what they're telling you. The only hole in that argument is this. In our parliamentary democracy, if you have 16 people on the government side and you have 14 people on the opposition side, the opposition will present their arguments, but when the 16 sit down to vote, they are the majority. What they say will go. So the numbers on either side don't matter in that respect. What matters is the advocacy. What matters is what is being said. But look at what is happening in relation to what is being said to you. I have heard all kinds of make-up stories and concoctions and misrepresentation of a number of things that is packaged carefully and given to you, trying to tell you that you have a bad government. Put them in. Don't mind that they are not competent. They cannot do anything for you. It is better to have us than to have them. That's what they're seeking to tell you. Well, let me share a few thoughts with you this evening that I think will help to focus us and center us on what is truly important in this election. One of the things that the opposition is seeking to put to you is that they will come to office and what they will do is reduce VAT. They make that statement without doing the critical economic analysis to understand how much revenue are you going to give up when you lower the VAT. And that is because they have not understood the strategy around how we do taxation in Barbados. So let me just explain to you so you understand how it affects you at your dinner table, how it affects you when you go to the supermarket, how it affects you when you go to get health care. When Owen Arthur was in office, he introduced VAT. Prior to VAT, we had normal income tax. You pay income tax on your salary, you pay road tax, you pay land tax, you pay this other tax, you pay these services here, you pay import duties, and so on. And the problem with that taxation system was this. When you pay high personal income tax, what is happening is that before they give you your money from your employer, they take out the tax. So you don't get an immediate benefit from that piece of money. That money goes straight to the Treasury, and its job is to pay for the roads and the health care and the schools, etc. What we recognized we needed to do was that we needed, one, to increase the tax take. That is the amount of taxes, not what you're charging each person, but the number of people who are in the tax net. Let me explain what I mean. There are a number of people who don't pay taxes, either because they have a business and they can write off this or that, or for other reasons, they're outside the tax net. So taxing then goes only on a set of people. When you switch to VAT, what VAT is on every single thing that you buy. When you go to the supermarket and you pay $10 for an item, at least just under $2, is going to be for tax revenues. So what Owen Arthur decided to do when he introduced the VAT, he said, what we will do is as the VAT performs, we will slowly take off the other taxes. And so all along the Barbados Labour Party administration, we started reducing taxation. That's why I laugh when I hear Ralph talking about how we are overtaxed. What we do is we lowered personal income tax. Your income tax levels are not as high as they used to be. They lowered corporation tax. They moved that from 40% to 25%, et cetera, until it's come down to 5.5%. They abolished the road tax. Then on the property tax, what they did, now some people are not cash rich, but family might have a nice big piece of land. And that land tax is a burden when you have to pay every year. So properties that are under $400,000 don't pay any land tax, and anything over $400,000 you only pay on the amount above the $400,000, little by little taking off direct taxation. Now what does that do? It means that all of your money, or more of your money now, you can spend at the supermarket, you can spend at the boutique, you can spend at the hairdresser, you can spend with the mechanic, you can spend for drinks with your friends on Friday night and Saturday night. And every time you spend, you give a little piece of that to tax in VAT. But here's the beauty of that. That captures every single body in Barbados because everybody has to spend. So all the people who escape from direct tax get caught in the VAT tax. Everybody following me so far? Good. So now, how does that help us? When you have very wealthy people, it is obvious that they spend more money than people who have less money, correct? So through VAT, they pay more tax based on how they consume, but they can afford it. The middle class, they pay VAT on everything they purchase because they have more money than people in the working class. But the working class are a special group that is important to our country. Most working class people spend most of their money on basic items: food, light, water, gas, bus fare, lunch money, shoes, the basics. Yet they're paying VAT on all of those, and they're the ones that can least afford it. So what does a caring government do? What does a government who understands the pinch of the shoe for those who do not earn a lot? A caring government eases the burden of the VAT on them by doing what we did. We introduced the reverse tax credit, giving Barbadian families $1,300. And just imagine if you have 2, 3, 4 people in a house who qualify for that $1,300. In a year, you can easily have $3,900 being given back to that family to ease the burden of the VAT that they would have paid. You give it back to them in the reverse tax credit. But we took things a little bit further. When the country can afford it, people who earn up to the $25,000 and those up to the $35,000, then they get back. They get back their VAT at the end of the year. And now we've taken another step. Why? Because the handicapped, the persons with disabilities, the persons living with crippling diseases that they cannot work, etc., and pensioners have one of the hardest times in our country because pensions don't grow with wage increases. Pensions tend to be static, and the cost of living is rising. This year, in our covenant for 2020 2026, our covenant with you, we are now offering to our seniors and to people who have disabilities that they will get $1,200, and we've raised the reverse tax credit to $1,700. That is a government that cares. That is a government that understands what it is to live in a country where the cost of living may be high. And that is a problem that we have across the world. The cost of living is high across the world. Any of you have relatives in the United States, they will tell you that the cost of goods have gone up. The cost of transport has gone up. Everything has gone up. And so what we have to do is to manage. And our government, in caring for us, ensures that we are able to do that. Now, the second thing I want to share with you before I leave the stage is what are we going to do to help increase income in families in Barbados? There's only one way to do that. You have to upskill and reskill your entire population, giving them the skills that allow them to earn pay in better paying jobs. So there are two things that we decided that we needed to do. The first thing is you have to attract investment in new types of jobs that would give our young people the opportunity to work at jobs that pay well. Not the jobs that barely give you enough bus fare to be able to get to work and a little lunch money, and by the time you try to pay one utility bill, you're struggling. We decided that we needed to go for higher skilled jobs, but that meant if we attracted that investment on the other side of the scale, you had to have the education to prepare young people here in Crab Hill, young people here in St. Lucie, young people in St. James South and across this country. You had to be able to give them the skills that they could be employed in those jobs, to be work ready. And so Prime Minister laid out the plan. And you've heard a lot about educational transformation, and hopefully my colleague Chad will be here to share concerning that. But there's another part to the ministry that deals with education, and that is tertiary education. So we now have a new ministry of training and tertiary education, whose job it is to identify the new skills that are coming on board across the world that pay good paying salaries, that we can make sure that Barbadians are a part of that future. But we have a problem. There are many of our children who left school with a bad taste in their mouth. They didn't like school. They didn't enjoy learning. Math was difficult. They didn't want to go on to further education because they just didn't like it. And let me apologize. We were using a colonial approach to your education, failing to reform it. So now we are doing that, now that we've come into office, because this was started by the Prime Minister when she was Minister of Education back in the Owen Arthur administration. And we know, now that we've come back to office, we are going full steam ahead in educational reform. What do we want to do? We want to teach our children using a play-based approach, a project-based approach. Why? Because it's more exciting and stimulating for young children to do it, especially children from this era. These are children that are always on their phones. They're always playing with their tablets. They're into exciting games and exciting images and so on, that is fast moving and so on. And so they're not into the boring chalk and talk. So the more engaged they are in technology and wanting more and more stimulation, the higher we have to take the quality of education and the way in which we teach them. So that's one of the first things we've done, to ensure that we are equipping every single teacher to make learning more exciting, more fun, but at the same time increasing the child's ability to absorb and learn. But then there was something else we needed to do. We have to also apologize for the fact that the Westminster model and the colonial period and all that was associated with it lifted up only academic intelligence as the only symbol of being bright or being smart. If you could not win at doing 100% in history and science and math and highfalutin things, you were considered dumpsy. And you were told if you could not master the English and the math and the Spanish and the geography, you were told that you should go and do technical subjects because you can't pass at academic subjects. So we sent our children who were highly talented in technical skills, we sent them in disgrace and shame to go and do technical subjects. And so buried them under a spirit of inferiority and low self-esteem. Well, that has got to stop, because the world has finally recognized that there are many different types of intelligences in the world, and all of them are needed for different types of jobs, and those different types of jobs can earn good money. And so Barbados now is reforming its tertiary institutions so that we can provide all of our children with the training in the skill that they have a passion for, so that they are motivated to learn, so that they're motivated to create and to pursue a career rather than sitting on the block or sitting under a tree, not being fully engaged. And that is the work that the Ministry of Training and Tertiary Education has been tasked with. And one of the areas that we have started that work is in the area of agriculture. Just Wednesday, we opened the Hope Agricultural Training Institute right here in St. Lucie, down by the Hope Plantation. This is a 45-acre agricultural institute. It was a gift to the people of Barbados by the Republic of China. And in that institute, you are going to learn all of the latest techniques associated with farming. You're going to have a vertical farm. You're going to have greenhouses. You're going to have aquaponics. You're going to see how to use technology to help you to test the soil and to know what to add to the soil in order to make your crops grow. This is going to transform farming all across Barbados. But we don't just want people to farm and just sell to others. There is more in agriculture to do. There's agro-processing, where you could take your produce and turn it into a product, put it in a can or a bottle, and market it overseas. But you have to be trained to do that. So entrepreneurship is going to be part of your training. Marketing is going to be part of your training. Health and safety standards are going to be a part of your training. And they have labs down there for research. They have all of the livestock sheds down there that you can learn to raise any animal that you want to in order not just to make a living, but to build a viable farming entity. And it has cost a great deal of money. But we have been thankful for the gift from the Chinese government. And what I want to say to the good people of St. Lucie, it is in your parish. Your children can benefit from it. Your children can get a job through agriculture. So I urge you, give us the opportunity to continue our work. Put Peter Phillips back in Parliament. Give us Peter as part of our team. Hold his hand. Partner with him, and on February 11th, get out to the polls early. Put down your X for Peter. In St. James South, put your X for Sandra Husbands, and put your X for the Mia Amotley administration. God bless you all.